The Debt in Her Smile. Chapter 1. The gulls circled low over the harbor that morning, moving in slow arcs that rose and fell like breaths. I walked down Main Street with my bag slung over my shoulder and the cold air biting at my hands. The light had that washed-out winter look, thin and uncertain. It made the rooftops and telephone wires seem older than I remembered, stripped of any illusion. The town had changed, but not enough to hide what it had been. The paint on the bait shop peeled in long strips. The hardware store sat quiet, the sign faded but still hanging. A few trucks were parked along the curb, engines ticking as they cooled. I saw faces in the windows, half hidden by blinds and shadows, all of them curious in that old, slow way this place had. I paused at the corner where the street met the harbor road. The wind shifted and brought the briny smell of the tide with it. It felt like someone pressing a palm to my chest. Not hard, just enough to remind me that this was the place I had left, and that leaving had never been the same as forgetting. A man stepped out of the barber shop and let the door close behind him. He squinted at me for a long moment. His hair was thinner than before, and his shoulders carried a slump that hadn't been there in our younger years. "Mason," he said. "Yeah," I answered. "Didn't think you'd come back." He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "Not after everything." "Neither did I." He nodded once, a small gesture that held more understanding than the words he hadn't said. Then he walked off toward the harbor, leaving the cold air and the quiet in his place. I kept moving until I reached the diner. The glass door rattled in its frame as the wind pushed against it. I saw her before I went in. She stood outside with her coat pulled tight around her waist, the collar turned up. Her hair was pinned loosely, some strands falling around her face. She looked like she had been waiting for the morning to make up its mind. When she noticed me, she held my gaze for a moment. Her eyes were the same, steady, questioning, unflinching. Then she smiled. But the smile was thin and worn at the edges, shaped by years and things neither of us had spoken aloud. "You're early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded. "You look tired." "I am." Another gust of wind swept between us, tugging at her coat and making the sign above the door creak. She glanced up at it. "You'd think after 30 years someone would fix that," she said. "Some things aren't meant to be fixed." She looked back at me, and the smile faded into something more fragile. "That's what I'm afraid of," she said. We stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. A truck rumbled past, its tires crunching over the frost. The world felt suspended between us, like the first breath before an answer. "Do you want to go inside?" she asked. "Sure." She opened the door and a warm blast of air rolled out. The diner smelled of coffee, bacon, and old stories. A few people sat at the counter, and they turned their heads in the slow, cautious way small towns have. Their eyes lingered on me, then shifted to her, and then back to their plates. We took a booth by the window. The vinyl seats were cold, cracked at the corners. She took off her gloves and placed them on the table. "You're really here," she said. "Looks like it. How long are you staying?" "I don't know yet." She tapped her fingers against her coffee cup. A nervous habit I remembered from the nights when we stayed up too late talking about what our futures might look like. "People will talk," she said. "They always did." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." I watched her face as she spoke. There was tension in the lines around her mouth. Not anger, but something quieter and heavier. "I didn't come back to make trouble," I said. "Then why did you come back?" The question hung between us. The answer was there too, but I wasn't ready to say it. The waitress came over with her pad in hand. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please," I said. "The usual, Claire?" the waitress asked her. "Yes," she said, without taking her eyes off me. When the waitress walked away, Claire let out a slow breath. "I want to understand," she said. "That's all. I'm not sure I can make sense of it yet." "Try." I shook my head. "Not here. Not in front of half the town." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "Fair enough," she said. The coffee arrived. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat settle into my fingers. "How's your father?" I asked. "He's older. Tired most days. He asks about you sometimes." "Does he?" "He asks why you left without saying goodbye." I stared out the window. The harbor was visible beyond the street, the mast shifting with the wind. There was no goodbye to give then, I said. You could have tried. Maybe. She studied me, the way she used to when she wanted the truth but didn't want to force it out. And your mother? She asked. Gone, I said. She looked down again. I'm sorry. You don't have to be. A distant horn sounded from the water. The fog was rolling in low and deliberate. Claire leaned back in the booth. You were always running, she said. Even when you were standing still. Maybe that's why I came back. She lifted her eyes. To stop running? To see what I left behind. And what do you see? I let the silence stretch before answering. You, I said. She closed her eyes for a moment and shook her head. Don't say things like that, she said. Why not? Because they're dangerous. Only if they're not true. Her eyes opened. They were sharp, but there was something fragile beneath the surface. Is it true? She asked. Yes. She looked away, out the window, toward the fog creeping over the harbor. We're not the same people we were, she said. I know. And the past? It's not a place you can just walk back into. I'm not trying to. She turned back to me. Then what are you trying to do? Understand. Understand what? Why leaving felt like the only way. And why coming back felt the same. Her expression softened. You could have written. I did. Not to me. I couldn't. Why? I took a slow drink of the coffee before answering. Because I knew if I wrote you I'd come back. And I wasn't ready. The diner bell chimed as someone entered. The cold air rushed in behind them. Claire didn't turn to look. She kept her focus on me. So why now? She asked. Because there are some things you can't outrun forever. Are you talking about me? She asked. I don't know. Maybe. She nodded slowly. You broke a lot of things when you left, she said. I know. Some of them didn't heal right. I know that too. She reached for her cup but didn't lift it. Do you still think about that night? She asked. The question hit me harder than I expected. Every day, I said. Her jaw tightened. I do too. Outside, the fog swallowed the last of the harbor. The world felt closer, smaller. Claire, I said. Yes. Do you want me here? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She studied my face, searching for something. I don't know, she said. But I know I don't want you gone again. The words settled between us, heavy and uncertain. They were not an invitation, but they weren't a refusal either. I felt something shift then. Not in the room but in the space between us. What would you do if I stayed? I asked. She sighed long and weary. I try to forgive you, she said. And I don't know if I can. I don't expect you to. Then why stay? To try. Her eyes softened and for a moment, she looked like the woman I remembered from years ago. You were always stubborn, she said. Takes one to know one. She smiled again, a real smile this time, small and warm. Let's get out of here, she said. Walk with me. We left the diner. The cold air hit us sharp and clean. She wrapped her coat tighter, and I adjusted the strap on my bag. We walked down the harbor road. The fog pressed in from all sides, muffling the world. The boats rocked gently at their moorings, ropes creaking. I used to come down here every morning, she said. After you left. Why? Because I needed a place to be angry that wasn't my house. I nodded. Fair enough. Some days the anger helped. Some days it didn't. I'm sorry, I said. You saying that now doesn't change what happened. I know. She stopped and looked out at the water. But it means something, she said softly. We stood in silence, watching the fog swallow the docks. Mason, she said. Yeah. If you stay, things will get complicated. They already are. She looked at me, her breath clouding in the cold. You're not the only one with a past here, she said. I figured. No, she said. I mean it. There are things I haven't told you. Things you won't like. Then tell me. Not today. Claire. She held up her hand. Not today, she said again. I nodded. She took a step closer. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. There's someone else, she said. The words hit something deep inside me. Something raw. I figured as much, I said. It's not what you think. Then what is it? She looked down, then back up. He thinks I'm his future, she said. And I don't know how to tell him he's wrong. A cold gust swept through us, sharper than before. Does he know about me? I asked. Not yet. And what do you want? I asked. She took a long breath. That's the problem, she said. I don't know anymore. The fog thickened, and the town disappeared behind us. But I know this, she said. I can't lie to him. And I can't lie to you. You don't have to. Yes, she said, her eyes steady and sad. I do. Because the truth is going to hurt someone. And I'm not sure who yet. A boat horn echoed across the bay, low and mournful. Claire stepped back. Go to the inn, she said. Get a room. Rest. And then what? Then we'll talk. But not now. Are you going to tell him? I have to. When? Her face hardened. Not in anger but in resolve. Tonight, she said. My stomach tightened. Claire. It's the only way, she said. A silence fell between us. A heavy one. She touched my arm just once. Don't disappear again, she said. Then she turned and walked into the fog, leaving me on the harbor road with the cold wind and the sound of the boats shifting in the water. I watched her until she vanished. And when she was gone, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit. Her return in my life wasn't the beginning. It was the warning. And the trouble I'd come back to face had only just begun. Chapter 2. The inn stood at the edge of town, where the paved road gave way to gravel and the land opened into a stretch of dunes that rose and fell like the backs of sleeping beasts. It was an old place, weathered but proud, with cedar shingles gone gray from years of salt wind. The porch wrapped around the front, its railing warped, its rocking chairs set out in a row like quiet sentries. I walked toward it with the slow, uneasy steps of someone entering old territory. A few cars sat in the gravel lot, their windshields fogged by the cold. The air had grown heavier since I'd left Claire at the harbor. The fog rolled inland like a tide, swallowing the trees and power lines, leaving only the faint glow of lights in the inn's windows. Inside, the lobby was warm and dim. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. The wooden floors creaked under my boots, the sound familiar enough to stir something tight in my chest. The innkeeper looked up from the desk. He was a tall, thin man with silver hair, and the kind of lines around his eyes that came from years of watching people pass through with stories they didn't want to tell. Afternoon, he said. Need a room, I replied. You staying long? A few nights. Maybe more. He studied me as if trying to place a memory. Then he nodded. You're Claire's friend, he said. I hesitated. Something like that. Room 12, he said, sliding a key across the counter. It's quiet. Faces the dunes. Thanks. As I turned to go, he added. She's a good woman. Deserves the truth. All of it. I paused but didn't answer. Truth had always been a slippery thing here. Room 12 was small but clean. A single bed sat beneath the window, the quilt faded but warm. A desk stood in the corner, its surface scarred by old cigarette burns and carved initials. I set my bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. The room held a silence thick enough to hear myself think, which was the last thing I wanted. The questions I'd avoided for years pressed in from all sides. Why I left. Why I came back. What Claire still meant to me. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. The fog outside dimmed the light until the room felt suspended between day and night. Sleep found me fast, heavy and dreamless. When I woke, darkness filled the room. A faint glow seeped in from the parking lot, casting thin slats of light across the ceiling. The clock on the nightstand read 7:14 p.m. I sat up slowly. My head felt thick, as if I'd slept far too long or not long enough. A knock came at the door. Soft. Hesitant. I stood and crossed the room. When I opened the door, Claire was there. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, her breath visible in the cold night air. Her hair was down now, falling over her shoulders in loose waves that caught the faint light. Can I come in? She asked. Yeah, I said, stepping aside. She walked in and stopped near the window. Her eyes flicked around the room, then settled on me. Did you sleep? She asked. A bit. She nodded, then unbuttoned her coat and draped it over the chair. I talked to him, she said. I felt something shift in the air. How'd it go? She gave a humorless laugh. About as well as you'd expect. He was angry? Angry, confused, hurt. She paused. All the things he had a right to be. I watched her face. There was no tremor in her expression, but her hands betrayed her, fingers curling into the fabric of her sweater. What did you tell him? I asked. The truth, she said. That you're back. That you matter to me. That he needs to know before anything else goes forward. He asked if you loved me? She hesitated. Yes. And what did you say? Her eyes met mine, clear and unwavering. I told him I didn't know, she said. Because I don't. Not yet. Not the way I need to know. Her voice held a quiet tremor, not of fear but of honesty. He asked me if I loved him, she continued. And I said yes, she whispered. But not in the way he wants. Not in the way that would make me stay. A long silence settled between us. So what does he want now? I asked. Time, she said. He needs space. So do I. She walked to the window and looked out at the darkened dunes. The fog had thinned, leaving only the faint shimmer of moonlight on the sand. I didn't come here to ask you for anything, she said softly. Then why did you come? She turned, her expression open and bare. Because I needed to look at you, she said. Truly look at you. And see if the past was just the past, or if it was something waiting. I stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough to feel the warmth of her presence. And? I asked. I don't know yet, she said. But I'm not afraid to find out. A knock sounded on the door again. Claire froze. I opened it. The innkeeper stood there, his face drawn tight. There's a call for you, he said. Came through the front desk. Urgent. For me? I asked. Yes. A Reverend Porter. Says it concerns your family. My chest tightened. Claire stepped closer. What is it? I don't know. Come, the innkeeper said. The line's still open. The lobby was empty except for the fire in the hearth and the sound of the wind outside. The innkeeper handed me the phone, then stepped back to give me space. This is Mason, I said. A voice crackled through the line, thin and distant. Mason, this is Reverend Porter from Ashford. I'm sorry to call so late. I tried reaching you earlier but couldn't. What's going on? The Reverend hesitated. It's your uncle, he said. He's gone missing. I closed my eyes. Missing. He was last seen yesterday evening. His truck was found near the old lighthouse. Doors open. Keys on the ground. No sign of him. The room felt suddenly colder. We've got volunteers out searching, the Reverend continued. But the weather's turning. We could use your help. My voice came out rough. I'll be there by dawn. God bless you, son, he said before the line went dead. I set the phone down and leaned against the desk. Claire stood near the doorway, her face pale. Your uncle? She asked. Yeah. Is he? I don't know. But it's not like him. She moved closer, placing a hand on my arm. You should go, she said. I will. Do you need anything? I shook my head. She searched my eyes with a quiet desperation. Let me drive you in the morning, she said. No. You need to stay here. Mason. Claire, I said gently. You've already had a long day. And this is something I have to face myself. The words tasted like something old and bitter. She didn't look away. You're not alone, she said. Not anymore. The fire crackled behind us. The wind rattled the windows. For a moment I wanted nothing more than to reach for her, to let the weight of everything fall away. But the night had changed. The air carried a new kind of tension. Rest, she said softly. Please. I nodded. She touched my face just once, her fingers warm against my skin. Come back safe, she whispered. Then she turned and left through the side door, her figure disappearing into the cold. I returned to my room. My bag sat open on the floor. I packed it again, pushing aside the mess of thoughts that clawed for attention. My uncle's laugh echoed in my memory. The rough, generous sound of a man who had never once asked anything of me. The man who took me fishing as a boy. The man who told me stories about storms and shipwrecks and the stubbornness of the sea. If he was missing, something was wrong. Very wrong. I sat on the edge of the bed, lacing my boots. A gust of wind hit the window. The glass shuddered. I stood and switched off the light. As the room fell into darkness, the truth settled over me. Coming back to this town wasn't just about Claire. It was about debts. And one of them had just come due. Chapter 3. The sky was still dark when I stepped outside, carrying my bag over my shoulder. The air cut sharp against my face, cold enough to sting. A thin frost covered the grass along the inn's walkway, glinting under the weak porch light. Somewhere in the distance a gull cried, lonely and out of place in the pre-dawn stillness. I walked to my truck, brushing the layer of frost from the windshield with my sleeve. The engine turned over with a reluctant groan. I sat there for a moment, letting the heat crawl in slow waves through the vents while I gathered myself. The road ahead led north, past the dunes and the marshlands toward Ashford, toward the lighthouse, toward whatever had pulled my uncle out into the dark. I thought of Claire, the way she had looked at me last night. Exhausted, frightened, still holding something back. Part of me wanted to go to her before leaving town, just to see her face again, to settle the uneasy beat inside my chest. But the morning wasn't made for that. It was made for searching, not longing. I turned the truck toward the main road. The drive north was silent except for the hum of the tires and the steady pulse of my thoughts. The fog clung to the fields and low hills, moving in slow drifts. Buildings rose and vanished like half-remembered dreams. The sun tried to break through the horizon, casting long streaks of pale orange across the sky. But the clouds swallowed most of it, leaving the world washed in muted light. As I approached Ashford, I saw the first signs of the search. Trucks parked near the church, headlights dimmed but still glowing, men and women gathered in heavy coats. Some held thermoses, others maps or radios. Their breath formed white clouds in the cold. I pulled into the gravel lot beside the church and stepped out. Reverend Porter was waiting near the steps. He was shorter than I remembered, or maybe age had pulled him downward. His coat was buttoned tight, his hands buried deep in the pockets. "Mason," he said, relief and worry mixing in his voice. "Any news?" "No," he said. "Not yet. But the teams have been out since dawn. We'll find him." I nodded, though hope felt fragile. "Where was he last seen?" I asked. The Reverend pointed toward the cliffs. "Near the lighthouse." His truck was parked on the access road. No footprints except his up to a certain point. Then the trail becomes muddled. He hesitated. Like he wasn't alone. A chill ran through me. "Show me," I said. The path to the lighthouse was narrow and uneven, winding between thorny brush and patches of frozen grass. The sea roared below, the waves crashing against the rocks with a violence that felt personal. Searchers moved along the cliffs with cautious steps, their bright jackets stark against the gray morning. The Reverend stopped at the top of a ridge. "This is where they found the truck," he said. The vehicle sat there still, dusted with frost, doors open, keys hanging from the ignition. The inside was clean. Too clean. I crouched beside the tire tracks. "Were these here yesterday?" He shook his head. "Weather cleared them overnight. Hard to say what came and went." "Any sign of a struggle?" "None." The Reverend paused. "But his footprints end there." He pointed toward a patch of flattened grass near the cliff's edge. I walked to it. The grass crunched under my boots. Beyond it, the ground was disturbed, but not by one person. By several. Or by someone moving fast. The wind picked up, carrying the sting of salt. "You think he fell?" I asked. The Reverend looked out at the sea. "If he did, the tide would have carried him out. But we've searched for hours and found nothing." Nothing wasn't good. Nothing was worse than a body. I scanned the horizon. The lighthouse stood to the east, tall and silent, its white walls stained by years of storms. "Did he go inside?" I asked. "It's locked. Has been for months." "Locks don't keep my uncle out," I muttered. "He liked this place," the Reverend said. "Came here often. Said it reminded him of the old days. The kind that were simpler." "They were never simpler," I said. "We just didn't know the things we know now." The Reverend looked at me with tired eyes. "You think someone took him?" he said quietly. "I don't know yet. But he didn't just walk into the sea." I broke from the group and walked toward the lighthouse. The wind had picked up, cutting through my coat as if it weren't there. My boots sank into patches of soft ground. The lighthouse door was chained shut. The padlock hung cold and heavy. I tried the handle out of habit. Locked. For a moment, the world was silent except for the distant crash of waves. Then from somewhere behind me, a voice called out, "Mason." I turned. A man in a thick jacket jogged toward me. I recognized him, Edison, a fisherman who had known my uncle longer than I'd been alive. His face was drawn tight with worry. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "Your uncle," he said something strange a few days ago. I didn't think much of it then, but now. What did he say? Edison hesitated. He told me someone had been watching him, following him. My jaw tightened. Did he say who? No. But he looked scared, Mason. Like the kind of scared that sits deep in the bones. I stared at the lighthouse, its tall frame stark against the gray sky. "There's more," Edison said. "Go on." "He mentioned you. Said he needed to talk to you. Said there were things you should know. Things he should have told you years ago." The cold deepened inside me. Did he say what? No. He never got the chance. I looked back at the cliffside, at the sea beyond, at the place where his footprints had ended. "We're missing something," I said. "What do you think happened?" Edison asked. "I think he didn't come here alone," I said. By late morning, the search had widened. Boats went out along the coast. Volunteers combed the marshlands and forest trails. Radios crackled with updates, none of them promising. I walked the length of the cliffside again, slower this time, watching for anything out of place. A scrap of fabric caught my eye. Caught in a low branch near the trail. I crouched and lifted it. Blue. Coarse. Worn. My uncle's jacket. But the fabric was torn. As if someone had ripped it. Not the wind. Not the brush. Someone. A shadow passed across the ground as the clouds shifted. The sea roared below me. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I stood slowly, the scrap held tight in my hand. Whatever had happened here hadn't been an accident. And whoever had taken my uncle might still be close. I scanned the cliffs, the dunes, the thin slivers of forest. The wind changed direction. I felt watched. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Claire's name lit the screen. I hesitated only a second before answering. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tight. "I'm fine. For now." "I heard from someone in town. They said you found something. A piece of his jacket. Torn." She fell silent. Then, "Mason." "Yeah. Be careful." A simple request. But it felt heavier than anything she'd said in years. "I will." "And Mason." "Yes. If someone was watching him, they might be watching you too." The wind howled across the cliffs. "I know," I said. I hung up and looked again at the lighthouse. The door was locked. But something told me the answers were inside. I reached for the chain. Tested the padlock. It held firm. But the rust around the hinges. That was a different story. I set my jaw. Took a breath. And kicked. The metal screamed. Once more. Twice. The hinge gave. The door swung inward. A cold, stale darkness waited inside. I stepped over the threshold. And the feeling of being watched followed me in. Chapter 4. The rain didn't fall straight in Cold Harbor. It came in slanted lines, pushed by the wind as if the sky itself wanted to drive the town into the sea. By noon the clouds had settled low, gray and heavy, and the air smelled of rust and wet rope. I walked the old breakwater alone, listening to the waves slap the stone like impatient hands. The tide was running high. It broke in white bursts against the rocks, throwing mist into the air. The cold clung to me, but it made my thoughts sharper. I had left the house early, not wanting to face the rooms with their quiet judgment. There are mornings when a man knows he won't find answers indoors. I stopped near the end of the breakwater. The fishing boats swayed in the harbor, their hulls creaking. A gull circled overhead, let out a sharp cry, then drifted away. The world felt stripped down to its bones. Behind me, footsteps scraped on the wet stone. I turned and saw her approaching, Helen, hair tousled by the wind, coat flapping like a loose sail. She moved with a kind of determined grace. She always had. "You picked a fine day to disappear," she said. Her voice carried easily through the wind. "I wasn't hiding," I said. Her eyes narrowed just a little. "You walk off without a word before sunrise, and that's not hiding?" I needed air. She stopped beside me. We both looked out to the water. It churned like something alive. I know that look, she said after a moment. You're searching for a way out. That's not it. It is, she said. You've always looked at the sea when you're ready to run. Her words hit clean and hard. There's no easy reply when the truth is spoken plain. We stood there in silence for a while. The wind howled at our backs. Something inside me pushed forward, wanting to speak, but the words tangled. Helen, I said finally, last night. I know, she interrupted. I shouldn't have said what I said. And I shouldn't have answered the way I did. She lifted her collar against the cold. It wasn't the words. It was what sat behind them. I met her eyes. And what was that? That you don't trust any of this, she said. Not me. Not yourself. Not the idea that something broken can be put back together. I let the sea take my silence. It was easier than admitting she was right. A gust of wind struck us. She placed a hand on my arm to steady herself. Her touch was light, but it carried all the weight of the past. You came back here, she said. To this town. To me. But you're still standing on the edge of it, as if you could leave again before anyone notices. I won't leave. Then look at me when you say it. I turned. Her face was wet from the spray. Her eyes were clear, steady. I won't leave, I said again. And this time I meant it. She let out a slow breath. It wasn't relief, not exactly. More like she was allowing herself to believe the possibility of relief. Good, she said. Because there's something you need to hear. The tone in her voice tightened the air between us. What is it? She looked past me. Out toward the far edge of the sea. Her jaw tensed. It's about your brother, she said. He didn't just disappear. And he didn't leave town because he wanted to. The wind dropped for a moment, and the sudden quiet felt heavier than the storm. What are you talking about? I asked. She hesitated. Then she stepped closer, her voice low. There's something I never told you, she said. Something I should have said a long time ago. But I didn't. And now it's caught up with us. She swallowed, steadied herself. He came to me that night. The night he vanished. The world seemed to tilt. The boat swayed harder against their moorings. A wave crashed at the base of the breakwater. Helen, I said. What happened? She looked at me with an expression I had never seen from her. Part fear, part guilt. He told me he'd found something, she said. Something dangerous. And he begged me not to tell you. Not until he knew whether it would destroy you. The wind rose again, carrying the scent of the deep sea. What did he find? I asked. He said he'd been followed, watched, and that someone in this town wasn't who they claimed to be. I stepped back. Why didn't you come to me? She shook her head. Because I promised him. And because he wasn't wrong. You weren't ready to hear it then. I felt the cold cut through me. Not the wind, something deeper. Helen, I said, tell me everything. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a voice carried across the breakwater. It was sharp, familiar. Hey! We both turned. A figure stood at the far end of the stones, moving toward us with slow, deliberate steps. What now? Helen whispered. The figure raised a hand, not in greeting. In warning. We need to go, she said. Right now. But it was already too late. The figure had reached us, face shadowed by the storm. And I recognized him. He was the last man I expected to see alive.